We really are at the tip of the iceberg in our understanding of the Vedic wisdom, which offers a kind of a framework for mindful decision-making, self-awareness, introspection. And you did cover some of those topics. The Bhagavad Gita, of course, children, of course, have been taught at schools. But using it in your daily, life and cultivating this inner calm and analyzing situations, I think it's fantastic that children at this age are getting to explore things like that. And they've come up with some very interesting questions, which I would like to ask you. Inika has asked a question which says, how do I make a clear decision for myself with everyone giving me all their opinions? How do I make a clear decision without second guessing it?
So, how to make a clear decision without second guessing it, and with all of the different kind of inputs that come to us. I don't know. If you figure it out, let me know. I think I think whoever they are, and all of us, even many of us who've got a lot of experience in management and leadership, it's not to say that when we make a decision, we don't second guess it. I mean, I think it might even be a little bit dangerous not to second guess it. So I don't think there's a problem with questioning or continuing to keep, your mind open about the decision that you're making. I think the point about influence and making sure that you don't lose your own voice with all of the different external influences coming in, I think that's a really interesting point as well. I would just say that we all have influences coming to us. There's actually no situation where you'll have no influence. So none of us are as the saying goes, no man is an island. Like, none of us are completely isolated in our decision making. So the question is not whether I will have any external influence. The question is, which influences do I choose to factor into my decision making? That's the question. And my suggestion would be that you think about some important parameters or criteria that will help you decide which influences you're gravitating towards accepting. So, for example, one of the things that I often get asked by high school students, now even primary school students, is the amount of external influence that comes through social media, right? So that's a real obvious one that many people experience. And they experience it because the person who is providing some feedback or input is on the other side of a screen. They don't know that person. So my sense is that because we're distancing ourselves from that input, we can get in the habit of trying to perform or live up to the expectations of people we don't even know, rather than accepting or looking for feedback, input from people who are actually close to us, who know us well, who love us, etc. And that we are sure have our best interests at heart. So like, if somebody really cares about you, you're confident this person really cares about me. To seek that person's influence, I would say, is a great thing. There's no, that doesn't mean that you have to necessarily do what they are guiding you towards, if they are indeed guiding you. But I'm saying that those types of influences are beneficial because, like I said before, there is no scenario where you have no influence. It's just like, if you're studying English, you're going to read some type of literature, right? So then the question becomes, for the curriculum department, which literature do we put in front of these students? And to me, it's common sense that you would put the highest form of literature. So in the same way, you want to take influences that you can see are higher in terms of their consciousness. One's influences that are clearly founded in knowledge, clearly founded in care, clearly founded in a sense of, being constructive as opposed to critical. or demeaning. So these are just some parameters. And so I guess my main point is, don't think about not having influence, thinking about which influences, be mindful, be choiceful about which influences you accept.
Deepa has asked a question which says, what affects your decision making? Mental state, personality, or physical conditions?
Actually, all of those things, mental state and personality are quite related, and your physical scenario and conditions or kind of external factors all play into that. So there's no getting around that. There's no ability for us to deny the influence of personality, conditioning, psychological state, circumstance, external, physical, all of these things, whether it's mind or body, and the external world, all of these things are going to factor into your decision making. So that you can just take for granted. The question then becomes, okay, how do I respond to these different layers? How do I ensure that, for example, like if you talk about personality, right? Now, we all have different aspects of our personality. So sometimes I can be a really kind person. And sometimes, if you catch me on the wrong day, I can be a not so kind person, right? We all have, it's not like I have just one person, I'm always kind. I'm not. I wish I was, but I'm not. So then the question is, when I'm making a decision, when I'm trying to think about influence in terms of my own personality, which side, which part of me is influencing that decision? Is it the nice, kind side of me, or is it another side of me? And that's the traffic light system, right? So the not kind part of me should, when I recognize that, I recognize that as red, stop, don't proceed. That's not who you're supposed to be. When I recognize my mindset, my state of mind, I can say, as being situated in that state of kindness, then that's green for me. So I can proceed and I know that the outcome will be good. So I think it's recognizing within us what part of us is speaking at that moment.
That's interesting. What part of us is talking to us? I mean, I'm like constantly now, there is the signal always in my head. Now, if I'm going to be driving and there is a signal, yes, you're going to be unkind-minded. So Arnav has asked another very interesting question. What is the difference between regular and mindful decision making?
When we say, first of all, I'm struggling a little bit with the word regular because I don't think there is any regular. I think so if we categorize it as mindful and not mindful. So for me, mindful is basically stimulus response. Okay, stimulus comes, I have no gap, I just respond. It's instinctive. I don't mean intuitive, I mean instinctive, right? There's an instinct. Now, the Gita and the Vedic tradition tell us that if you are operating at the level of stimulus and response, unmindful decision making, if you're operating on the level of stimulus and response, guess what? That's the level at which animals operate. So the Vedic tradition is actually quite harsh in this sense. It's basically saying, hey, look, don't be like an animal. You have the capacity for more. Because if you look at an animal, what does it do? It gets a stimulus and it gets a response. There's no gap. There's no intellect that's being put at play. You all have intelligence. You all have the capacity to delay your response to the stimulus. You, therefore, have the capacity to make a mindful decision. That's the difference. One is just reacting, and mindfulness is about being deliberate, being intentional, being purposeful in your response or your decision. So pausing is one easy, common technique. So certainly pausing is a technique which we can start with. It's not the only technique. Like if the fire alarm goes, I don't expect you all to go into lotus position and meditate on what to do. Fire alarm's gone off. You just do what you're told to do by the school, and we know where the fire exits are. So it's not like you have to respond in the same way every time. But if you practice mindfulness, if you practice things like meditation, they do empower you to make the right choice at the right time.
Which actually leads me to the next question, which Sana has asked. how not to be influenced by external factors when you decide. How important is it to know everything before you make a certain decision?
Okay, so two assumptions there. One is, again, like I said, don't be under the illusion that you're not going to have external factors. It's a fallacy. It's just about choosing. I won't rehearse that again. I've already made the point, right? So accept that there will be external factors. Now focus on which external factors you want to accept. Okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing is, sorry, could you just repeat the second part of that question?
Important is it to know everything before you make a certain...
You're not going to know everything about a decision. You're never going to know it. It's like boiling the ocean. So again, it's a fallacy. Don't worry. You're never going to be... But what you can do, have you heard the term, don't sweat the small stuff? You heard that term? Like there's a phrase which kind of like, there are points of leverage where if you lever those things, you'll see the most impact. Now, the benefit of mindful decision-making is that it helps you focus on the points of greatest leverage, because you're not going to be able... It's like, I mean, imagine you're studying for your exams, right? So when you study for your exams, like, are you going to memorize every word in the textbook? Like, you're going to have some kind of approach where you're going to have to learn either through past paper practice, through however you study, like ways of leverage that you're going to get the most benefit from the amount of time that you have to put into preparing for that exam. Because the approach of knowing everything is like, for every single exam, I'm going to know every single word in the textbook. Clearly, that's never going to be the case. So how do you focus? What will help you decide what those points of greatest leverage are, right? And that is the skill, if you like, of mindful decision-making. That's the skill that you will start to acquire when you become more intentional, more reflective, or more purposeful in the way that you approach important decisions.
When you say something like this, we also need to know, like Ahan said, how do I focus on one thing at a time properly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I actually think...
Because I think this is the age where, it's like a monkey in your mind. There are like 100 things going on. You've got parents and you've got external influences, you've got peer pressure, you've got classes to attend. And I'm sure how many of you have monkeys in your mind? I think everyone. We still do. So how do you focus on one thing at a time properly?
A verse in the Gita comes to mind where Krishna says, so Krishna's giving Arjun some instructions, and then at the end of that passage, Arjun says, look, Krishna, the mind is more difficult to control than the wind. Like, what you're telling me is not practical. It's more difficult to control than the wind. I.e., Arjun is saying it's impossible to control the mind. How am I supposed to do that? Nobody can control the wind. Nobody can control the mind. And it's a really powerful question, I think, because when I thought, yeah, that's true. Like, I feel like the mind is like that. It's constantly coming up with something, even when I'm telling it to be quiet. But Krishna's response to Arjun is actually quite interesting, because he says that it's through practice and detachment. So these two things are going hand in hand, and I want to focus in a bit on practice. So I for the last 30 years or so, I do about 2 hours of meditation in the day, and I do it early in the morning. So how many of you have practiced or experienced meditation? Quite a few of you. Okay. So how many, put your hand up if the form of meditation that you practiced was asking you to empty your mind. Okay. So most of you put your hand up are saying that that's the type of meditation you did. And how many of you were successful in emptying your mind? Yeah, a bit of a trick question here. Because the truth is that how do you know you emptied your mind? Because you had the thought that, okay, now my mind is empty. And as soon as you had that thought, your mind was not empty. Like, the point is that none of us can empty our minds. Like, that's not a practical solution to anything. So emptying the mind is not just like removing all influences is never going to be the case. But what you can do is be able to focus your mind on the things that you want to focus on, right? That's the trick. The trick is not to say, okay, empty my mind. Okay, then what? The trick is to kind of say, I want to focus on this, whether it's my paper or whether it's my, a conversation I'm in or whatever it might be. And I want to have the ability to direct my mind and consciousness to that thing in that moment without distraction. How do I do that? And that takes practice. So that's why, the form of meditation I do helps me do that. So whether you're doing it, because if you do it in ideal circumstances, so for me, and this is not the same for everyone, it will be different for you, which is why I told you to write the list of 15 things. Have you forgotten that already? Okay, still in your, okay. It's only been half an hour. So what I mean is if you practice these things, you'll get better and better at it. It's like riding a bike, right? When you learn to ride a bike, it wasn't easy in the beginning. Now you do it without thinking. So these things are habits. There's no miracle going on here. There's no magic or mysticism. It's very, very simple. It's like anything. You practice something, you'll get good at it. If you practice meditation, you'll get good at it. So when you practice something, in the initial stages, you always practice, or not always, but you try to practice in ideal circumstances, right? Not real life circumstances. So when you're practicing riding a bike, your friends or your parents probably took you to a safe place, like a park, before they let you cycle on the road with the cars. So you practice in ideal circumstances. So find the ideal circumstances for you. For me, it's ideal is early in the morning, before anyone's awake, in a quiet room where it's a little bit dark, and I can just focus and I don't have to get distracted by anything else that's going on, like bottles falling on the floor, right? So then that's an ideal scenario. But when I get good at doing it in ideal scenario, then guess what? When it happens to me in real life, I can bring some of those skills to that scenario. But if you just think that, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do it in a real life scenario, that's like taking somebody who's never ridden a bike before and saying, off you go, on the street, on your own, see how you do. Not recommended. So at least try to do something in your ideal scenario, and then you'll get good at it.
That was, thank you for that explanation. That was really very insightful. Now, finally coming to, before we start taking questions from the children, Jeshta is asking us again, back to the exams, how will the mindful decision making help me during stressful board exams?
Yeah, okay. So a really good question, because obviously this applies to everyone, I think. In terms of when exams come, it's a highly stressful period. And my problem was I was hopeless at exams, and the problem was I never got stressed about them. So I was on the opposite edge of the because I had zero stress. I was just chilling, walking into not recommended. So a certain degree of stress is good. A certain degree. Stress actually places you in optimal performance mode for a certain period of time. Like elite athletes are able to place themselves in situations of some degree of stress, okay? Because you want your body and kind of neurochemistry to be at a certain place so you perform the best that you can. But that only works for a peak period of time. You can't sustain that. So it goes to a peak, 2 hours in the exam, and then it comes down, right? Until the next exam. So the ability to be able to turn it on and off, that's important. Because the mistake that many people make is they try and turn it on and they think that high performance is staying on all the time. Just like they think that chasing after a peak level, imagine, have any of you been bungee jumping? Good, don't do it. Imagine bungee jumping, it looks exciting, right? It looks like, well, that could be fun. But imagine bungee jumping all the time. So you go up, you jump, climb back up, jump, climb back up, jump. At a certain point, you're going to hurt yourself. So the thing with stress is, and ability about mindfulness, remember all of this is really centering around one key point. And that is that how am I able to control and manage myself? right? And point myself in the direction that I want to be pointed, to ramp up my preparedness or my stress level just before I start the race, or just before I start the exam, or just whatever it is. And then be able to dial into normality. Because if we don't do that, what's happening is we have no control over it. And when we have no control over it, you know what happens? Your stress goes through the roof. Because now it's like, I have no control. And as soon as you're in a situation where you have no control, you're like I don't know if you're familiar with the phrase, but like a rabbit in the headlights. Like you can imagine an animal in the road, and a car's coming full on. It freezes in the middle of the road when it doesn't matter what else it did, run this way or that way, it'd be fine, but it froze. And that's why it got hit. And over stress, that kind of brings us to that scenario. So all I'm saying here really is real simple. It's not complicated. All I'm saying is these types of mindfulness practices, they will just help you cope better, because you will be able to manage your own stress levels, your own emotions. And it's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to work at it. If it's something that you want, if it's like, I don't care about this stuff, I'm good, then great, But if you feel that actually this is something I want as a life skill, then it's something you're going to have to work on, just like anything else you want.
Interesting that you say that, because things like meditation and yoga actually happen at schools now. Ira also must be having it. I'm assuming it happens at Vidyashilpa as well. So I guess it is a good base because it starts from grade 1. I think the whole yoga and meditation and staying calm and probably would help by the time they reach grade 10. Thank you for that explanation.
As long as it's well delivered. And I say that.
Sorry.
As long as it's well delivered, because I say that knowing from Avanti's experience that we've made so many mistakes with our delivery of yoga and meditation that has turned children away from it. So the experience that kids have with something like yoga and meditation, for example, I saw teachers teaching this, where they were telling kids to empty their minds. And I was like, who's going to be able to do that, Or yoga where, anyway, you get the point. So I think that the children's experience of that, if you're able to deliver it in a way that's inspiring and exciting and engaging, that's priceless.
Battle one. So shall we move to the children asking the questions, right? From Ira, our guest school, we have Anargya. Anargya, can you stand and also introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, sir. My name is Anargya. I'm in grade 9 and I'm from Ira Academy. My question has actually already been answered, but what would be the best state of mind while making mindful decisions was my question. If there's anything you would add on, I would like to hear it.
So what is the best state of mind to get yourself into the place where you can make a mindful decision, is how I'm understanding the question. Yeah. Okay. So, the Gita gives a really beautiful framework around the gunas, which helps frame what does that mindset look like. And I'll find a way to share that so you have it just kind of as a note form. But in summary, the idea is that there are a few criteria that can help you check yourself. So one of them, for example, is around motivation. So what is my motive in the decision that I'm making? What is the quality of the motive or the intention, right? So, there's a famous book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. So it's a similar idea. How do I check my motivation? Or another factor that comes in is, how much do I know about the scenario? Actual knowledge about consequences now and future, like short-term, long-term, personal, widespread. So like that, there are a few different things. But if you were to summarize it or bring it into just crystallize it, the clue is in the word itself in terms of mindfulness, right? The clue is in this notion that you are present when you're thinking about that decision. and there are different factors like knowledge and motive and other factors that play into what constitutes presence. But presence summarizes that sense of being ready to make a decision. Thank you.
We have Sasi Pranav from Vidyashram.
Hello, sir. I am from Avanti School, grade 9, the head boy of Avanti School. I would like to ask you, so who has the right to decide what is good for the child? Like, is it the parent or is it the child? And what if the child is going in like the wrong direction, even though it doesn't suit them?
I think the answer is depends who you ask. But since you're asking me, I think a lot also depends on the age of the child. So the idea, at least from the Vedic tradition and Chanakya's perspectives on this, is that autonomy moves onto the child gradually. So, and that's common sense, right? Like it's common sense that a child that is preschool, i.e. 0 to 4 or whatever that is, has less autonomy in that sense, because a parent is their guardian. But post 16, Chanakya kind of splits into 3 ages, which I think are really quite powerful in terms of child psychology. So he says 0 to 5, the child is treated like a prince. They're basically just like showered in love and affection. And then from 5 to 15, it's kind of like a servant, But the idea is that's the age where rules are implemented, parameters are put in place, discipline is applied. And then from 16 onwards, it's a friend. Like the child is a friend to the parent. So, like, actually, I think it's actually a very powerful framework, because after the age of 15, 16, I mean, most children are going to rebel against parental advice. I mean, probably from the age of 12. But increasingly so, because they're moving into a space of their own identity. And therefore, the parent's role also shifts from somebody who's determining to somebody who's there to catch them if they fail, like a friend would. So I do think there's a transition happening, but I also think that it depends on what decision is being made. So like, if it's about what are we having for dinner, that's one thing. If it's about what career am I choosing, that's another thing. So I don't think there's just because the question is so wide. But I think the principles we need to take away from this are, one is it changes it changes over time. It changes in regards to the type of decision you're talking about, but it also changes in respect to the capacity of the child to take ownership of the decision. So if the child has the capacity to take ownership, and from my perspective, like dealing with students, but also with youth in general, I'm personally convinced about children taking ownership over their decisions, particularly once you get to high school, especially so, and the role of the adults increasingly becoming points of support for those decisions. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sasi. We now have Idhant, who has a question.
Good morning, sir. I'm Avanti from grade 10 IRA Academy. My question was that how do you know if you're making the right decision in context to your career? Like, there's tons of different things you can do, right? And how do you know you're going down the right path?
I think we were talking in the break. I mean, career choice right now is like probably harder than it's ever been, because it's hard to choose. Well, it's hard to figure out what does the future look like in terms of the workspace and AI and all of those kinds of things. So that there's lots of different factors that bring that into play. So I don't envy you in terms of like decision making around that. I'll start with the principle, and the principle is the nexus of two things. The nexus of what do I really, really like, what really inspires me, and the other thing is what am I uniquely good at. So if you're able to find the overlap, like if you think about it like a Venn diagram, and if you're able to find the overlap between what do I really, really like, and what am I uniquely good at, what are my particular skills that, people around me, my friends, my teachers, my parents, like I know that I'm uniquely good at from their feedback and from my own knowledge of myself. If you can find that, if that's clear, that's a powerful place to be. That's one thing, that's the ideal. Even better is if that thing will make money, right? So like, and the path to money is not always clear. So if you're into performing arts, for example, that can be a challenging choice because it's not so easy to see, because it's a difficult industry to break into. But there's another way to think about this also. So that's one framework which you can apply, and if it applies to you, then I think that's great and it's easy. But there's another one, and that is that, if you don't have the ideal scenario in front of you, and this happened to me, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I was in, for your grade 11 and 12, so deciding on my university degree. And I'll tell you a funny story. So when I was in grade 11, I was choosing my university degree. I went to my career advisor at college, and he said, "What do you like?" And I said, "I like maths and finance and da da da." So he said, what does your dad do?" I said, "He's a dentist." "And what's your mum do?" "She's a dentist." And he said, "I think you should do medicine." And then, so I applied to do medicine. I got into med school. I got kicked out after a year, but that's a different story. But I applied to do med school. But in that decision, it was only after I found out that the only reason why they told me that was because that college had never had anyone going to med school. So they said, "Hey, this guy can get to med school, get him to get to med." So you have to be careful about where that influence is coming from again, right? Like, what is it that's driving either the advice that's coming to you or your own choice? But ultimately, like, you have to start somewhere. So what I find sometimes is that young people get so, like, they get this paralysis around choice because there are so many options to them, open to them, and the future is very unclear. So I would really recommend that, if it's possible for you, pick a subject that you're really passionate about. Because if it's not a profession like medicine or architecture or whatever, where you have to do the degree to do that profession, if it's not one of those professions, because that should be clear to you that you really want to do that profession, then any degree that you do, many degrees that you do, you'll be able to convert. Like with a master's or a conversion course. So law, banking, consultancy, all of those things, you can convert quite easily. So, but if you do something that you're really passionate about, you'll do well in your degree. And that will count for employers. So I think don't let the lack of clarity become like a point of paralysis. And some people think that if I think about this long enough, I'll figure it out and the answer will come to me like a light bulb moment. Hardly ever happens like that. Most people figure it out as they're walking the path. So the key thing there is keep your options open as much as possible. So, that's why we call I don't know what you call them here, but in the UK, we have enabling subjects. Like, for example, maths is called an enabling subject because it allows you exposure to the most amount of future potential degrees and career choices. So think about optionality, but think about keeping those options open if it's not clear to you what you want to do. But yeah, don't be afraid. Don't be too worried that you have to get the perfect thing straight away. Because from my experience, most really successful people, that's not been their journey. They found their way on, like, while they're walking that path. So don't be too concerned about it, but keep your options open.
being uniquely good at. I really like that term now. I think we're going to use it quite efficiently because children are uniquely good at something. It's just that they need to be honed and, see where it takes them. And enabling subjects, I think that's good advice. That's good. Right. Bhumika Bhatia from Vidyashal.
My name is Bhumika Bhatia. I'm from grade 8. My question is that in real life situations like helping a friend, responding to peer pressure or reacting in anger, our instincts and ethical values may conflict. How can we pause, think, and choose the option that is morally right and responsible?
I would just refer back to what I said earlier, in the sense that don't expect that you're going to be able to do that flawlessly without practice. What you're asking there, I think all of us wish we could do, right? I mean, we all wish we could do it. But some of us are practicing to try and being able to do that. And some of us expect it to come like out of the sky, like, I deserve it, I should have that capacity, and it will just come to me in the moment. And obviously it won't. So I would say, think about it. If that's important to you, if that capacity is important to you, then practice. Try. Here's another way you can practice. Rather than waiting for a big thing, pick something small, right? It could be something like what you choose to have for lunch. You're making a mindful decision about what you choose to have to lunch. It could be something small, like you get a message from a friend that you don't like the message. So it could be like you practice on, how am I going to respond to this message? So if you just practice with things, you'll find the way yourself, because it's actually it's inherent within us to be able to do it. It's just we need to be able to bring that out. Is that okay? Thank you.
Should we open the floor for any questions? Anyone?
Hi, I'm Arnav Siddharth from grade 10, IRA Academy. Now that you've made the decision, and let's suppose this decision, there's no right answer, like the trolley problem again. How are you going to justify your decision? Like, after you made the decision, it's set in stone. How are you going to live with it? Like, the decision you took, how are you going to justify it to yourself?
And when you say justify it to yourself, presumably here we're talking about consequences.
Yeah.
Okay. So, again, a verse from the Gita comes to mind where Krishna is saying to Arjuna that there is no action in this world without fault, without some fault. You can't do anything in this world without any fault. So perfection doesn't exist in that sense, right? And we're all trying to make our way in the world. We're all trying to do the best that we can. And your point about how do I live with myself? How do I justify the consequences of my action? Really, this would drive us really crazy with guilt if we were not able to be satisfied that I made that decision with the best possible motivation. And to your colleague's earlier question, motivation is an important factor to determine whether I made a choice mindfully or not. So if I made a choice with the best motivation, if I made the choice with as much knowledge as, that was practical, reasonable, I took advice, all of those types of things, I was in green, and then I made the choice. That's as much as you can hope for in this world. And then we have to be able to let it go. See, that's the other thing that we didn't have time, unfortunately, to get into this, but the notion that of action and reaction that Krishna explains in the Gita is a really powerful idea. And just a glimpse of it here now is this idea that we have to do the best that we can, but we can't control the outcome of every single action that we make. We don't control the context that we find ourselves in all the time. We can manage our responses to a certain degree, But if we're looking for perfection, we're always going to be disappointed. So, but the ability to kind of say and to hold our hand on heart and say, I did the best that I could, means that we can be free from that sense or level of guilt that can come with negative consequences from the actions that we may perform. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
We have questions. We'll take one more. This would be the last question.
Sir, as Surpanaka wanted Ram very badly, so how do we get out of this materialistic want that we have inside of us that keeps...
I missed the first couple of words. Can you repeat the question, please?
So how do we get out of this materialistic want? Like how Surpanaka had a want for Ram.
A want. Okay, so how do we get out of just materialistic desire like that? I want this. Yeah, okay. Yeah, again, let me know when you figure it out. That's why I picked this balance, right? So one want is Surpanaka's want, which is a materialistic desire. On the flip side is, do you remember who was on the other side of that? Sita. Right. And what does Sita represent in that scenario?
Rolling of the disc.
Right. So it's not like Sita also wanted Ram. Right?
Yes.
So the difference was that she was operating within rules. She was operating within, you can say, civility or custom or whatever, however you want to, lawfulness even, right? So the idea is that it's not that we can get rid of material, obviously some extraordinary or exceptional people may try to get rid of material want. Personally, I don't think that's a practical approach to life. I think most of us are going to have material wants. So now the question is, how do I frame those wants so that they are good for me, not bad for me? And then good for, not just for me, but they're good for society. Sita's engagement with Ram is a good example because she married Ram. So marriage is an example of the institution of putting some structure around materialistic want for the opposite gender, right? It's a framework for doing that in a way that benefits the person, the individual, and society. So the question, when a material want arises, the first response may not be, how do I get rid of it? The first response may be, how do I frame this in a way that's constructive and not destructive for me and for others? I think if we try and reframe the want, the desire, into something positive or that can become positive, that will be easier for us to act on than to try and get rid of the want. Because to try and deny the want is like trying to empty the mind. It's just highly impractical. Is that okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As we come to the end of this session, let us here remember to reflect on the valuable insights shared with us today on mindful decision making, Nitesh. The discussion has reminded us that our choices, big or small, shape our actions, our relationships, and ultimately our future. By learning to pause, to reflect, and make mindful decisions, we equip ourselves to respond thoughtfully. I'm sure this session has left a meaningful impact on all of us here. These lessons are not limited to today, but are tools we carry forward in our academic life and beyond. On behalf of IRA Academy and Vidyashilp Education Group, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to you for taking time out to guide us with your clarity and wisdom. Thank you for inspiring us. And thank you all.
Can I just end with just saying, expressing my gratitude. I really, this is my first time to, pretty much as an adult, first time to Bangalore, and you've been really an incredible audience, and I mean that sincerely. Your questions, the conversations I had in between, your attentiveness was really hope-giving. I think you guys are intelligent, you're switched on, you want to do the right thing, and I wish you the best of luck. And I'm very grateful that the schools, your teachers and school leaders here allowed me to come in and speak with all of you, and I wish you the very best of luck. Thank you so much.